Canada needs its own place to lift off into space. And according to one group of space enthusiasts, that place belongs in BC. Space Launch Canada wants to build the country's first space launch on Vancouver Island. The group is hosting an event tonight at UBC to promote the idea. Redouane Fakir is a Vancouver astrophysicist and the director of Space Launch Canada, and he joins us on the line. Hello.
Hey, good afternoon, Stephen.
Now, what exactly do you want to do? Would this be a Cape Canaveral North?
Spaceports nowadays, the modern ones, like the new one that's up at Alaska and Kodiak Island, look completely different. They're not these big, sprawling kind of airport-style installation. It's very small, very low impact. Basically, would fit very well in BC kind of environment.
Right now, do we launch any of our own technology into space, or do we rely on others to do it for us?
Canada is just about one of the only ones that actually does not yet have that capability. Even third world countries now have that capability. In China, India, and countries like Korea, Japan, and others. Of course, Russia and Europe and the United States, obviously, for a long time. All of these countries, some of which are our competitors, by the way, up north for sovereignty, they have that capability of putting their own hardware into space, but we do not. So we have actually decided that this is really a priority today, especially since there's really no future today for a great nation without that kind of free access to outer space. The information to enforce sovereignty is based now in space. The technology for telecommunications is based in space. And what we've been doing so far is we've been paying hundreds of millions of dollars to quarters like Russia and India and others to actually put Canadian hardware into space. And I don't think that is really sustainable for the long-term future.
Is it not, though, cheaper than building an entire launch center and launching your own vehicles into space?
Absolutely not. That kind of that's one of the misconceptions that is circulating in all kinds of environments. If you just take a look at the cost of building a spaceport, it is actually low cost compared to a lot of the other projects that we have going. I mean, a spaceport itself would cost something like $200 million, 250, something around that. And that is like half of what we spent for renovating the roof in our local stadium here in Vancouver. Compared to a lot of local projects, it is not a very big expense, given the huge strategic value of becoming a nation that can actually access space on your own. There's other misconceptions, so that the impact, like I said, over the environment, which actually is not there. And part of what we're doing is to start a campaign of information so that we all educate ourselves. Number one, about what is going on in the rest of the world, what other nations have accomplished as far as space launch autonomy is concerned. And number two, what is actually involved in these things. This is something that we Canadians can do relatively easily in a relatively short amount of time. And I think the time to have that happen is actually now. And
why Vancouver Island? Why is that the ideal place for a space launch center?
This is all about looking at Vancouver Island in kind of a new light. If you actually look at the real Vancouver Island, the one that you'll see from high altitude or from space, it does not look like your Vancouver Island on the map, on the road map. Vancouver Island is an awesome, beautiful piece of land that separates Canada from this massive ocean, the Pacific Ocean, the biggest ocean on Earth. And when you look at it from that perspective, it looks like a very natural gateway, potential for a very natural gateway to launch over the Pacific Ocean. Part of our campaign is to really make people look at Vancouver Island with this incredible potential, this other sector that can come to Vancouver Island that is related to space. And that includes space tourism, that includes education, that includes inspiring the local communities, First Nations and other communities, by this new kind of sector coming to the island, which is not polluting, does not impact the environment, and is potentially very lucrative.
How would it benefit the region exactly?
Well, once you have a spaceport, now you're able to launch other countries' satellites besides Canadian satellites. And you're talking hundreds of millions of dollars in fees that would be paid to us instead of us paying it to others. But besides that, there's a huge amount of space tourism that starts gravitating towards these space hubs that, like, for example, in Sweden, they have a Corona town that became a space kind of town. It was just a mining town with not much going on. Now there's huge amounts of money moving to that area. So impact from space tourism, impact from spin-off from education, conferences on astronomy and cosmology and stuff coming to that area. You're talking hundreds of millions of dollars in spin-offs for the local communities.
What kind of hoops do you need to jump through before we launch off into space?
This is such a no-brainer once you have it. Once you look like we have, like we've looked and we traveled around the world and see what other countries in the world are doing. It's really just a challenge of information. That's why our biggest challenge is this campaign we're doing now, that we're trying to educate ourselves and the people in BC and Canada about what is the real situation. Once that realization is there and people really find out what is involved, I think, as I said, the technology is there for us to do it. And I think everybody will realize that Canada must and will have space launch autonomy. So we have even went to the extent of organizing for this new way of looking at Vancouver Island, a discovery kind of trip that we fly from Vancouver and have a 2-night, 3-day kind of discovery retreat, if you wish, to look at Vancouver Island from that perspective. And I think it's very refreshing for people who have been to Vancouver Island to do that kind of trip.
Redouane, very good to talk with you this afternoon. Do keep us posted.
My pleasure, Steve.
Take care. Bye-bye now.
Goodbye.